And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of comparisons between two top recession-slam states, Nevada and Michigan. My special guest today is Michigan U.S. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter. Assuming that 0.3% improvement in Nevada's March unemployment rate is accurate and not indicative of more folks having stopped looking for work, it still was the 26th straight month of double-digit unemployment. And the improved figure is good news for you, only if you got one of those jobs. Then unless you're working for the government, getting a job depends on business owners feeling confident enough to hire you. So let's focus here on what's being done in Nevada and in Michigan to improve things for small businesses. We've discussed it here on Eye on Washington previously. Among the top issues employers care about, they want tax relief, they want access to adequate credit to meet payroll demands, they want the same access to credit to make capital investments, and of course they want to be able to more easily provide health insurance benefits to employees. Just a few pro-small business efforts supported by Nevada's delegation members, individually or as a group, include bills that increase loan limits, provide better access to investment capital, increase deductions for startup expenditures, award grants to states to be used for small business lending programs, and provide a payroll tax holiday, among other legislative efforts aimed at making businesses feel more able to offer you a job. And Congressman, I saw a report in Business Times that Business Times International, that the top thing was that in the United States, small businesses pay more taxes than anywhere else in the country. I'm sure our audience who are small business owners, and you, of course, are not surprised, but tell us about that. How is that hurting the ability to hire people here?
Well, small business is the backbone of the American economy. It's the fruition of people's happiness, where they finally get that chance to sell goods and services and help out their community and be rewarded for their entrepreneurial efforts, where they can hire people. And in many cases, what happens is the government takes them for granted. The government views them as a stream of revenue to protect government, as opposed to the entity which a small business is, the engine that drives the American economy, especially in communities, because a lot of people live near the small businesses where they work. But what we're seeing at the federal level is the argument, which I think is kind of felonious, it's kind of fallacious, is the argument is that, well, we just need certainty. Business owners just need certainty. Well, the reality is there's only one thing worse than uncertainty. It's the certainty of bad decisions, where you have increases in taxation, regulation, litigation, as we've seen recently, which make it harder for the entrepreneurs, and especially the small businesses, to be able to thrive and succeed and expand. So what you want to do is create a stable environment across the board with true and meaningful reforms that allow them to grow and expand. What you do not want to do is try to grow an economy beneath the crushing weight of big government. It'll be impossible.
You know, I know that in Nevada, our number 2 industry is mining, and I know that this kind of fits what I'm about to say. You know, for some businesses, a rough tax environment only means they can't hire people. For other businesses, it means they're going to go to another country to even do their business. Isn't that correct? Yes,
one of the reasons for outsourcing is taxation, regulation, and litigation, but also I would argue that we have to be very careful with the countries in which we deal. Communist China is not a free nation, and they set up a system whereby access to their market is not as open as access to ours. So how can you compete with a country that is unfairly situated vis-a-vis you? And look at the trade deficit and see how we're doing. So while we do have to take care of taxation, regulation, litigation at home, we also have to remember that there are some systems of governance which are antithetical to the United States, which give them an unfair competition in the way that people endeavor to trade now, such as manipulation, such as the suppression of a domestic market while they pursue their mercantilist exports, such as they continue to try to steal industrial secrets as well as military secrets from the United States. So these are all aspects of what go in, especially in a manufacturing state or a state like Nevada with mining. The unfair competition from abroad has to be confronted, and they have to be forced to follow internationally binding agreements, or else the trade is going to have to change.
What, as far as small business in Nevada and Michigan, what similarities are there, and what federal efforts have you led or supported in Michigan that might be applicable to Nevada? What's worked, hasn't worked?
Well, again, the first thing that we're doing, unfortunately, seems to be the triage against the tax increases that some people seem to claim they want. As you know, when we talk about who's rich and who's not, sometimes a whole lot of small businesses get roped into that by reason of accounting under the tax code. So what you want to do is first do no more harm. Secondly, I think what you want to continue to see is to create an environment of prosperity whereby the free flow of capital, as you mentioned, especially to states like Michigan, which are capital-intensive manufacturing entities and states like Ohio and elsewhere, is to make sure that you finally correct what was not corrected with the Wall Street bailout. Sure, what happened with the Wall Street bailout was the government threw $600 billion at the problem and hoped it went away. That did nothing to remove the toxic, quote-unquote, assets, which were the homes that had been reverted back for foreclosure, out of the system. There's nothing forced upon the banks to restructure, become more nimble, more accountable, and allow the free flow of capital to come down. So what I would argue is that you have to make sure that we have a full and fair accounting of the major highly centralized Wall Street banks. You have to make sure that they're restructured for the future if they're no longer able to carry their own weight absent the intervention of the Fed or the federal government. And that we go back towards a more entrepreneurial, innovation-based economy with free flow of capital, especially decentralized capital, to fund those startups and small businesses. We also have to stop the FDIC from coming in and dealing with the community banks as if they were the ones that caused the problems, getting them to write down loans or worse, because they are also engines of free flow of capital within the United States. But if you don't have access to credit, you don't have access to capital, and you're staring tax increases or more regulatory burden placed upon you, be it through the EPA or be it through the new health care law, you're not going to be able to expand even if you wanted to.
As we're wrapping up this segment, in your opinion, what is the, if you had to pick one, what's the #1 thing the federal government could do to help a small business owner feel like he or she can confidently hire somebody?
Oh, I would say reverse the vast majority of policies that have been enacted in the last 2 to 4 years.
Well, that wraps that up. We're going to be right back with housing. We're going to compare and contrast Nevada and Michigan's foreclosure crisis right after this. We're back with our closing segment today. Congressman, one thing is certain. Both Nevada and Michigan are pretty much one industry states. As we close out today's show, if you could just give one piece of advice to Nevadans and the delegation of what would help turn things around in Nevada, what would you say?
Well, you have to make sure that the government doesn't get bigger and more intrusive and more expensive and make it harder for them to pursue their dreams.
I want to thank you so much for being here today. This is a treat for us. Thanks so much. I hope you'll be on again sometime.
Thanks
we'll do
for
another
having me as the
compare and
guinea
contrast.
pig. Yeah.